So welcome back to the video. I'm here in the basement in London, and on today's video I'm going to be talking about my Ribble Endurance SL, a bike that I was given around the end of January, and I've done in that time around 4,000 kilometers on it, including my training camp in Calpe. So I've been riding it for enough time to really test it out to its potential. So let's jump in. Before I start jumping into the details and the nitty-gritty of this bike, I wanted to just say Ribble over the last few years have really made some positive improvements. It's been a pleasure seeing them year on year really develop their bicycles and their brand to a point now where it's actually at a very high level, due to, I would imagine in part, their sponsorship of the Pro Ribble cycling team, which I actually rode for a couple of seasons ago. So when I did ride for the team, obviously I rode their top-end race bike, which had a lovely custom colour scheme back then. It was a light blue. We all had the same bikes, and that's actually a couple of iterations older than the bike that I have now, the Endurance SL. That wasn't a bad bike by any means, but this one, let me tell you, is something different entirely. I've also ridden a Ribble, as you guys might remember, across America. It was a titanium gravel bike, so a very different kind of bike, but I do have a fair bit of experience with the Ribble brand. So the Endurance SL is Ribble's top-end race bike, and the guys at Ribble have been really generous to kit out the bike with Ultegra Di2, a pair of Zip 302 carbon race wheels. So the actual layup of the carbon fibre itself is one of the most important elements, obviously, in the carbon frame, and this one gets the balance just right. It's just about the right amount of stiffness that feels like you're gonna get all of the power transfer, but not enough that it feels like it's gonna shake you off. So the rear seat stays, or aka the rear triangle, on this bike, they've gone for the lower seat stay design. It's a trend that we've seen more and more of in the recent years. Started off specifically by BMC. I actually have one of their time machines, which were one of the first iterations of their top-end road frames to have that smaller triangle in the rear. I came across this article written by Jamie Burrow, who is Ribble's own head of product design, and he lists the benefits. The first is a more aerodynamic design from the stays over the rear wheel, so an improved CDA. The second is that the seat post itself offers more compliance, which generates a more comfortable ride. And the third being that smaller triangles are stiffer. It does look a little bit quirky, but I think it's a design quirk that's here to stay. As to the actual design of the frame itself, I would say it's a mixture of an aero bike and a lightweight climbers bike. So you're going to get the lightness that you require on the climbs, but also the aero quality is from the tubing that you're really going to feel in road races. Next up, the handlebars. So these are actually a carbon fibre monocoque one-piece design made by Level 8. Obviously the system gets rid of the normal stem and handlebar usual cockpit setup, which means that if you do run a bit of a weird setup where, for example, a really long stem and a narrow bars, you might have a little bit of issue with this setup, but I believe they have a pretty wide selection that would fit most riders' measurements. An added benefit with these handlebars as well is obviously the cables are all integrated within, which saves up to 40% in terms of drag, which is nice. Now we come to the disc brakes themselves. As you guys might have seen on my last bike review video, which was the Canyon bike that I took to Vietnam, of course it had disc brakes, but disc brakes on a road bike are very different to disc brakes on a gravel bike. I was always unsure of disc brakes, going back a few years, as they were kind of coming into the peloton and as they were seen as a new technology. There was lots of controversy, especially in the World Tour, a whole load of debate as to whether disc brakes should be allowed full stop, or whether they were just a new ploy from a brand like Shimano to make more money. And then there's the very science of, obviously, if you have half a bunch, some of which racing with rim brakes and some racing with disc brakes, obviously there's going to be a huge amount of discrepancy there in braking distances, especially if it's raining. However, I can say that now, having used both braking systems, the difference is absolutely night and day. And let me tell you that it is so nice to have that peace of mind that if I did need that braking power in the wet, that I had it. So with disc brakes, other than the pure power that you receive, the modulation is actually something that you get over rim brakes. You know, it's something that really will give you a whole lease of new confidence on the descent. The other part of having that disc brake set up is the through axle bolt. Now on this Ribble, there are different through axle systems. The one that comes with this bike is actually an Allen key setup, which means that slightly frustratingly you will have to carry around an Allen key with you at all times. The final point on the through axle, which is worth considering, is that if you're like me and you like to do a bit of Zwift, a bit of turbo riding, you will have to set your turbo up. As far as I know, most turbos do not come ready for through axle setups. They come standard with the quick release, and you will need to buy a converter kit. For this one, a little bit expensive at 50 quid as far as I found, but fairly simple once you do have that converter kit to then swap it across. Now the Groupset Shimano Di2, obviously completely flawless as you'd expect from Shimano at this point. It's got a little seat post battery. I've had no problems with it whatsoever. Absolutely love the Di2. I must say the gearing that it's been equipped with is a compact Groupset, which for me is a first. I've never used a compact Groupset, mostly because when I'm racing there just isn't enough gears. However, on this bike with the compact, it obviously has a smaller ring up front, which means you're gonna have less distance between every gear. And for me, filming, especially when I'm going up a steep hill, it's actually been of a real benefit. Obviously, if I was doing some racing, I'll whack a 52 or a 53 on the front. So in terms of the wheels themselves, these are Zip's slightly cheaper carbon race wheel offering, the 302s. They're not the Firecrest, they're a very slightly cheaper version, I believe. And I absolutely love these. You can really throw them into the bends. They've got a really nice rim profile, which means you're not going to get blown around in the wind too much. And they're nice and lightweight. I'm running them with Vittoria Corsa 28mm tires. And again, these are actually a very race specific tire, which means that they're very slick, very fast, don't necessarily have the best puncture proof or the longest lifespan. So this Ribble Endurance is actually exactly the same bike as the Ribble Pro team are riding this year.
This year we've swapped a disc brake, through axles, new paint scheme, all team branded, and it's class. It's amazing how much stiffer this feels with the through axles as opposed to the rim brake bike.
Your paint job this year is a bit of a, how would you describe that?
Let's go blue chrome. Blue chrome
Blue
sounds
chrome.
right.
There you go, and it matches the kit.
Matches
so
the
nicely.
kit.
One of the key things I really loved about this bike was the paint job, or lack of paint job, should I say. They supplied this bike to me with a really nice naked matte carbon kind of finish. This is a bonus, obviously, because it saves a lot of weight, but I also love it because you can actually see the raw carbon underneath. And for me, that plain black, it's just classic, it's just simple, you can't go wrong. However, if you do want something different, lucky for you, Ribble do have a paint scheme on their website, which means that you have, I believe, upwards of 1 million different combinations to pick from. They do have a little section on their website where you can design, let your creative side go crazy and really design your dream bicycle. And then we get to the size of the bicycle itself. Ribble have covered most bases with sizes extra small, which is a 52 top tube equivalent, right up to an extra large, which is a 58.5. If it wasn't already fairly obvious to you, I absolutely love this bicycle. I've been lucky enough to ride, in my time as a cyclist, a huge range of top-end bicycles. Last year I rode the almost range topping Pinarello F10, the rim brake option, and let me tell you that this bike is absolutely up there with my favourites, if not the favourite. So overall, yes, it doesn't say Pinarello or Specialized down the down tube, but let me tell you that with this bike you're getting something very much equivalent to their top end bikes, which can absolutely hold its own against those bigger brands, but at a lower price point, which you can't complain about. To add to that, obviously Ribble is a British brand with a whole lot of heritage. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you had any questions about anything that I've said, or indeed stuff that I haven't covered, please let me know down in the description and let me answer as many of those as I can. Do you like the matte black that the bike came in, or which colours would you go for? Let me know in the comments. As usual guys, Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Ciao.